Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Blue Jays Today. We're your boys. We always got something to say about the Toronto Blue Jays. I'm your host, Adam Peddle.
And I'm your host, Nicholas Blaylock. And today, folks, we're going to be talking about J.D. Davis, a player who was very recently released from the San Francisco Giants and who is now being linked to the Toronto Blue Jays. Is there something there, or is it all smoke? We're going to get into that. We want to hear your thoughts down below, though. So, J.D. Davis, he was recently released by the San Francisco Giants, and that was kind of in a corresponding move, considering they got Matt Chapman in, so they didn't really need him anymore. And now you got Jon Heyman coming out here and linking the Toronto Blue Jays. Also shouting out Robert Murray, who was first with the news. What are your thoughts on Jays being linked to J.D. Davis?
Well, I, obviously, as a podcaster and fan of the Blue Jays, I love when we're getting linked to new guys. So can this guy be a great player for us? And hey, big shout out to J.D. Davis. He actually had a very good year last year. We look over at his baseball reference, guys. In 480 at-bats, 0.9 WAR, but you saw an average bat of a 103 plus. You know, across the board, just an average player. But what I really like, too, and probably what Ross Atkins would really like with this whole defensive scheme, is his fielding was off the charts. He had an outs above average in the 90th percentile, exactly 6, and a good arm strength. He's got versatility. He can play first base. He can play third base. He can play outfield. This sounds like a guy who should be a Toronto Blue Jay, man.
Well, I think that really does align with Ross Atkins, like you're saying. I mean, as we've seen these past few years, the mentality has changed. You know, it used to be Toronto Blue Jays, we go for sluggers and we get the pop. And they still like that, but I mean, it's clear that Ross Atkins has a type, and his type is somebody who is great defensively and who also has that versatility. And J.D. Davis does have all of those things. He's also 30 years old, so it's not like this guy is like completely past his prime or anything. Like, he still had a solid year last year, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if, you know, he has some type of renaissance type form in his career, right? 31, 32, 33. Those are still very productive years for some hitters, so he is absolutely, you know, he's a valuable guy.
Yeah, he is. And I could see why Jon Heyman would link the Blue Jays to this guy, J.D. Davis, because for obvious reasons, Matt Chapman, who was a Blue Jay, went over to San Fran.
Right.
And the Blue Jays, apparently to the rest of the MLB, do not have a third baseman, which, I mean, some of you could probably still argue, yes, they do not have a third baseman with IKF there. So it's like, oh, okay, this is a clear choice. This guy's free. He did well. The Blue Jays would be all in. But it's really not that easy because for a few reasons, we're going to get into them. But the first one is the roster construction is kind of confusing a little bit. Right. It's a bit of a puzzle piece, right? Because you got to consider when J.D. Davis got cut, first of all, you gotta if you want to get him through the waivers, you have to put him immediately on the 40-man roster, which would mean you gotta clear room for the 40-man roster for the Blue Jays. So that becomes a little bit of an issue.
Let's take a look at the 40-man roster right now, folks, and you can see everybody who is currently on it for the Toronto Blue Jays. Now, the first name that comes to mind, and I think a lot of people have made note of this, us included, if you're going to add someone to this 40-man roster and cut anyone, the first guy that you're looking at is Mitch White, and Mitch White just hasn't been working out for a while now for the Toronto Blue Jays. They acquired him a few seasons ago, and it just feels like that experiment, like they're getting to the place where they're kind of fed up with it. I don't think anybody, although Mitch White is a phenomenal human being and I want him to succeed, I don't think anybody would necessarily blink if they saw White go. But keep in mind, he's the only one really that feels like an easy cut candidate. And look at where the Toronto Blue Jays are currently at with some of their players. They got Joey Votto that they just brought in, right? So they're going to be trying him out. They got Daniel Vogelbach, who they brought in very recently as well. They're going to be trying him out. Both of those guys aren't on the 40-man roster. So if they wanted to bring one of them up, then that's Mitch White's spot. And now you're wondering, okay, well, who on earth would you cut for J.D. Davis?
Right, because if you're going position by position, I mean, you're looking over at the infield, and maybe you look at Leo Jimenez, but that's your number 5 prospect right there. You're not just going to cut your number 5 prospect who still has options, and then you look over, you're like, okay, well, who doesn't have options right now? Ernie Clement, who we just literally made a podcast on, and the entire baseball community is freaking out about how this guy could be potentially a good guy that you want to have on your team. Why would you go and cut him to get what you want to get from J.D. Davis to give you what Ernie Clement's supposed to give you. You know what I mean?
You're not cutting
it doesn't make any sense.
Clement, no.
It's a circle into a square puzzle piece kind of situation. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Well, I'll tell you right now, if the Toronto Blue Jays were to go out and pick up J.D. Davis, they get him either through waivers or they wait for him to hit free agency and then they can sign him for a smaller contract. Because we're going to get into the contract in a second. If they were to do that, I think that means the whole Joey Votto storyline is done. The whole Daniel Vogelbach storyline is done. Because if you were to bring up, let's say, Vogelbach and J.D. Davis to the 40-man roster, that means that Mitch White is gone. And then that does mean that one of these players that you're suggesting right now also has to go. And that means that they're going to have to pass through waivers, which they're never going to freaking do. So I think that if they were to go out and get J.D. Davis, then the Daniel Vogelbach and the Joey Votto, that's done now.
See, I'm okay if we never got Joey Votto, if it was just Vogelbach, I'd be like, okay, yeah, that will be our backup first base guy, third base. That makes a lot of sense. But when you do bring in Joey Votto, and a lot of it is just the name value. I mean, he was still a decent offensive player for age 39. Let's all give him some credit right now. 39 years old, Hall of Famer. You know, bringing him in is a whole other presence too, with his knowledge of the game. You know what he's going to do to impact that ball club. So I feel like it doesn't make a lot of sense, especially too that if you do want to pick him up through waivers rather than hitting free agency, you're going to have to pay him $6.9 million. And the Blue Jays, they've already spent a lot of money this offseason. Have kind of matched their budget from last year.
Yeah, let's take a look at the payroll very quickly, folks. Currently, I think the Toronto Blue Jays are spending roughly $244.8 million. So picking up a 6.9 right there. I mean, do the math. You're looking at $252, $253 million. And that's also more money, $7 million more than they wanted to spend anyways. And MLB Trade Rumors in their article was kind of highlighting the fact that nobody really wanted to pay $7 million at this point of the offseason because, let's face it, you've already written the checks out. You've gotten your guys. The people who are spending the money have kind of said, all right, we know what the payroll is going to be. Like, let's ride with this team.
It's the same reason why we didn't go and just get Matt Chapman back. It was like, well, we already spent the money, dude. We got IKF, our new third baseman. So that's it, man. You're right.
Yeah. Now, all of that being said, do I think that J.D. Davis would make this team better? I think he would. And I think that ultimately when you look at those stats, when you look at the versatility, when you look at the defense, when you look at the veteranship, that's a guy who I would want to have on this team. So I'm not like 100% ruling this out. And I think that me, Nick, and I would argue that you also, Adam, would go, okay, yeah, like this is a good player. But then I think that this move, to make this move anyways, it kind of throws into question, well, what were we doing with Daniel Vogelbach? And what were we doing with Joey Votto? Like, is this the new guy now? We're just going to throw those guys out? Like, what's the motive?
I think right now the timing isn't right for J.D. Davis to pick him up right now through waivers for money-wise and for the actual 40-man roster. I think the only way that Toronto Blue Jays would go and take J.D. Davis on is with the minor league contract. And you got to wait a certain time period before he passes through waivers and he actually becomes a free agent. At that point, if there is an opening on the 40-man roster, maybe we make a trade at some point. Maybe we do some sort of other move where a spot opens up. I could then see a reality, but I think at that point, there'll be another team looking to get him a better deal.
There's no one he's not going to sign a minor league deal.
No,
at
no,
the end
exactly.
of the day, he still had a good MLB season last year.
Exactly, but I'm saying like that's the only reality would happen, and to finish my thought is it won't happen because of that exact reality.
Yeah, it would mean by bringing him in, it would mean, like I said previously, Joey Votto and Daniel Vogelbach and Eduardo Escobar, because I didn't even bring him up, all of those guys, you're done with them now. And this is your new guy. So I'll leave it at this. If the Toronto Blue Jays are ready to do that, if they are willing to just throw those experiments, if you will, to the side and say, you know what, screw it. We like J.D. Davis that much. We think he's that much better than what these guys could bring. Then, yeah, I don't see why not.
Yeah.
I just don't think that they're necessarily going to do that.
Time for a quick shout out to Betway. Betway is the best place to make all of your sports bets on all of your favorite teams. Betway is also in collaboration with iGaming Ontario. Must be 19 years older to participate. And guys, please bet responsibly. Now, back to the content.
Could be proven wrong.
I could be proven wrong. I mean, like, could I see a reality where they cut Joey Votto and then bring in J.D. Davis? Like, maybe. I think it's a very slim reality where that happens because you know, you got Joey Votto, the hometown kid, and coming in, I think that's going to sell you a lot of tickets and do a lot more for your business.
Well, they just marketed the crap out of him, dude.
Yeah.
Like, they were all over this, you know? I feel like at this point, the Toronto Blue Jays fan base, even though this guy's been a Blue Jay for like 48 hours, you know, like, we're on the Joey Votto hype train, you know? Like, that would honestly hurt your fan base, and we'd be kind of pissed off if Joey Votto left, even though I will be the first one to admit, probably at this point in their careers, J.D. Davis is a little bit more production-worthy than Votto is.
If Joey Votto was just a random 39-year-old who batted .202 last year, I wouldn't care. But his name is Joey Votto,
right?
And he's Canadian. That's That's literally the only difference there. It's at your point. It's not a brain decision for me. It's heartstring decision for me.
Now, okay, let me ask you this then before we wrap this thing up: is there a possibility where they keep Joey Votto? They cut Mitch White, so they cut Mitch White. Joey Votto gets added to the 40-man roster. They find a way to pick up Davis, whether it be through the waivers or they wait for him to hit free agency. They get him on the a team-friendly deal, and then they cut someone else like a Santiago Espinal, because I feel like that would be the only potential guy that you might even consider cutting from the 40-man. Could that happen?
It's just tough. Like, you could argue paper to paper, J.D. Davis is going to provide you a lot more value, especially giving you a little bit more depth with the third base bag, the first base bag, some outfield. He's a good utility player. But again, you got options on Santiago Espinal. You can use that to manage your roster a lot better. You sign J.D. Davis, he's got no options. So it just feels, again, like the whole, we're putting the wrong puzzle piece in the spot. It doesn't make a lot of sense at this timing of my team.
Yeah, I think like 3 months ago, if this would have happened, this might be a different conversation. But like 2.5 weeks away from the regular season, walking in, it kind of feels like you want to know what your roster is, and this just feels like a lot of different moves to get maybe what's going to be a minor upgrade in that lineup.
And look, if Ross Atkins wants to do it, I mean, if you can figure out a way, do it, man. Like, I mean, he's going to help the team. That's what we're agreeing on.
Yeah, he probably would, but it would be a long ways to get him on to the team. Folks, let us know your thoughts about all this in the comments down below. Do you think that J.D. Davis is somebody that the Toronto Blue Jays should pursue? Or are you kind of on the train that we're on right now and thinking that he would be a good player, but it's inevitably not going to happen?
Yeah, guys, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And $3 a month to become a Patreon member. Shout out and thank you to all of our current Patreon members and to our YouTube members as well. You guys are absolutely awesome.
Thank you so much for watching.
And go Jays, go!